Hey guys, so welcome back to the channel, and we have an update on our presidential election here in Korea. It's been a hot minute, and there have been a lot of weird things that have been happening with our number one and number two candidate that we have some videos for if you're not familiar with. But we just had a huge announcement of a new contender that has entered the race, and it is a familiar face, but whoa, was he unexpected, and will he be our savior? So this guy, his name is Ahn Cheol Soo. He has run for president before, 2 times. He has also run for the mayor of Seoul before, multiple times, and he always got kind of close. He always was like this runaway bride, or he was always merging his party with another main party, and then kind of got screwed in the end, saying like, okay, well, you know, for the sake of winning this election, I will drop out of the race and let this more experienced politician take the candidacy for this unified team. And so now it looks like he's come to play. And at first I was like, wow. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. But in a weird way, thank goodness. Because you know, if you're like at a buffet and like all the good food has been taken, like where'd all the steaks go? Where's the chicken? Where's the crab legs? And then it's just like hot dogs and pizza. You didn't come to a buffet like, you know, like a fancy hotel buffet, or if it's like, you know, like a place where you expect good food and all that's left is something that, like, you know, is not, you know, not worth the money that you paid. And then you're just like complaining about the hot dog. And then you're hungry as time passes. And then all you see, you're waiting for something good to come out. You're waiting and waiting. So what's the metaphor? We're waiting for better presidential candidates. But all that's coming out is stuff that's like fake Oreos or fake Doritos or things that are like fake spam, and you're just like, what is going on? Where is the real substance? And then the hot dog comes back out, and you're like, oh my god, thank goodness, the hot dog is here. Let me have that. I am sorry for, you know, dissing the hot dog. So I kind of think that in this very strange election pool that we have, Ahn Cheol Soo has made a very good entry point. His timing has been extremely good, because in just my, you know, casual poll of people from both sides, nobody likes anybody. I mean, people who, you know, normally are very politically passionate, they do not like people in their own party. They're just like, I don't like anybody. There's nobody to vote for. And Ahn Cheol Soo, even though he is a familiar face, I do think he might have had a, you know, talk with the higher power, or had a reckoning where he may finally be ready. He may finally be ready. And let's go over the reasons why. But first, let's spill the tea on what number one and number two were doing, because they've been acting a little crazy. Number two, before in the series of YouTube videos, the liberal candidate, the one that used to call himself the Bernie Sanders of Korea, he is the mayor of Seongnam, our sort of Silicon Valley here in Korea, and he is known for giving a lot of handouts and promising big things and appealing to people's sense of kind of like an outsider, because he's supposed to be like the X Factor factory worker that became a lawyer and then, you know, rose up in politics, and he speaks really good in public. But then we found out, you know, all of those recordings where he abuses his own family members, saying that he's gonna use knives in places where the sun don't shine and like all this crazy stuff, and even send the cops to his own brother to get back at them for some sort of family squabble and gloat about it. I mean, that was crazy. But what has really finally kind of been a sticking point. Oh yeah, and then remember the whole scandal about him and an actress and like him and his DUIs. None of that really stuck. But finally what's beginning to stick is a huge land scandal where, as mayor, he oversaw the development of a neighborhood where they were putting up tons of new apartments and buildings, and so it is alleged that he essentially profited illegally off of it, and he has secret ownership of part of the company, because basically it's the government, right? But the government works with a private company, and he essentially, as the mayor, gets to choose which company they work with. However, he's denying it. It says like, oh no, I just chose the, you know, the managers in charge, and they chose, you know, who was gonna be, you know, in charge of this project, and they messed up, and now those people under him are being investigated, and they've admitted to some certain crimes. Like, it's been a big drama, and there's this like question of like, who owns this secret share or secret account? It's still undiscovered right now, and people think it might be him. So that is beginning to plague him, because there ain't nothing that gets Korean people a little bit ticked off if you have some real estate that you didn't deserve that they think that they should also have. All right, let's move to number one. Number one, how has he been going a little bit crazy? Well, he, in the debates and just in public, you know, of course he has been like we said, has had a, you know, what do you call it? Like, not a motor mouth, but a butterfinger mouth. Like, if you combine motor mouth plus butterfinger mouth and just saying all sorts of weird stuff. Like, one thing he said was like, you know, we should be able to give the poor more access to affordable food by letting them buy food that is essentially like poisoned, you know, like food that doesn't pass inspections, like food that is not fit for consumption. People are like, what the parasite is going on, or Snowpiercer is going on? And the big thing is that for 3 debates, people didn't notice until the 3rd debate, but on his left hand, he had inked in the Chinese character for king, as if he was just like, I'm the king, I'm the king, I'm the king. Like, you had to look at it like, oh yeah, I remember, I'm the king. Or people were like, is this some sort of weird shamanistic, like, witchcraft thing that, you know, I don't know, maybe like your controversial wife roped you into, or like maybe that mother-in-law who's also like running scams roped you into. Like, what is going on? Like, why do you have this strange thing inked on your hand? And I think the weird thing was, like, why did it take us to the 3rd debate in order to, you know, realize it? But there was somebody who finally realized it after the 3rd debate. All right, so these people have been going crazy, and there are some people still left on the conservative side. They still haven't picked a candidate. The liberal side has settled on the knife-obsessed mayor as their candidate for president. Okay, so who is Ahn Cheol Soo? His resume reads like somebody who already has had like 3 lifetimes. He went to Seoul National University, which is like a huge thing. It's like the Harvard of Korea. He was a doctor. And then he was also a tech entrepreneur. He made the standard antivirus software that we use in Korea, that we still use in Korea. And then he became a politician and he ran for president in 2012 and 2016. So he has done so much with his life already, and he has been seen as the outsider who can bring hope to Korean politics. At least that was definitely the huge momentum that he came in with the first time in 2012. By the time he gave up in 2016, and then definitely by the second time he gave up for the Seoul mayoral race very recently, I just thought, like, geez, like, does he get it? Like, does he really know how to play in this dirty field of Korean politics? You know, after all these years, can he really make the moves now? And I thought in his announcement speech for his third time at president, I think he's got it now. I think he's got it. I think he was very bold and brave to say this, and I'm glad he said it. And I am thinking that it does show a departure from the guarded, old-style Korean politics for him to be bold, upfront, and it wasn't even like that, like bold and crazy, but in the old kind of conservative world of Korean politics, it could be. He said basically, and he had to explain this. He said, when I first went to Yeouido, which is basically Washington in Korea, you guys set me as Ahn Cheol Soo, the reformer, the person who was going to change corrupt politics. And I went in as myself, but then I found that in order to win or to be able to survive as a politician, people were telling me I had to adopt the Yeouido politician, or basically become a Washington insider. And he said I had to put on that outfit, and I wasn't able to really fit into those clothes, he said. And then he said, now in this iteration, I'm back to myself. I've taken off that kind of outfit and I'm here as me, here to clean stuff up and actually take Korea to a new level that is basically focused on the new technological economy because of his tech background. But before we get into that, here's what I think really happened, because I think he glossed over a little bit, because this is his third try, right? I think the first time he did go earnestly as himself. And I think those politicians just saw him as like, what a newbie idiot. And they just devoured him and ate him up. But they were threatened by his popularity. And they were able to say like, hey, come join us. Maybe we'll do like a merge party. And then, you know, we'll have something for you. He always got screwed in the end, in the sense of like, hey, come join us because you're like a new candidate. Why are you setting up your own party? Come join the big party and then we'll maybe make you like our candidate because you're like a shining hope. And then he'd always kind of be pushed to the side, and then somebody from the establishment would be propped up. So I think in the first time he went as himself. The second time, I think he was like, fine, I'm gonna like try to be as like, you know, dirty as these guys. But I don't think he was able to do it like he said, because these other guys were like that way probably since the day they were born. And they've been practicing and honing that style of politics for years, and they probably like that type of politics. Because the key point is that they will stop at nothing because they feel they are owed. And these politicians, you cannot go toe-to-toe to them because there is no line they won't cross. And he probably found like, oh my God, you will go there? You will go all the way down there? And for someone like him, who was a doctor, a tech entrepreneur, somebody with a little bit of class and really probably didn't have to go down that dirty and desperate and didn't have an inferiority complex, he probably soon found out that he can't compete at that level in the mud because these people are willing to do anything at all. So now, when he says he's coming back for the third time, I do think he might be ready because he knows how the politicians down there play and to what extent they're willing to go to, and he knows how the mechanism works, and yet he knows originally what he was sent to do, and now he knows like what vision he has, and perhaps he has set up a strategy to figure out how he could do it. Now, what is appealing about what he said is that he wants to take Korea to probably like a G5 status. Korea's obsessed with the rankings, like in the G20. Are we part of the G8? So he wants us to rise up in terms of our GDP. And I do think that out of all the candidates, in terms of the way that our economy is going towards automation, robotics, and blockchain, I think out of all the old men, he is the only one that can actually quickly set a policy and understand how to work with government regulation and private business to be able to drive the country with policies that actually work in order for that to happen. We can't right now even get our real estate policy correct, and that is such a economy 1.0 type of problem. I mean, that is just like fundamental supply demand economics, finance economics, but we can't even figure that out right now. And so how are we supposed to like move the economy into a blockchain finance system with automation, with parts of the economy that haven't even been developed yet, with a leader who is stuck in 1970s and 80s thinking? So I liked how he said that part. He said, are we going to have this leadership still stuck in 1970s and 1980s? And he kept repeating that theme. Are we going to be stuck in the 1970s and 1980s? And I do believe that that is actually quite true. If you look at the way that people are thinking still about the way that power and the economy is structured, it is still based upon the glory days of a manufacturing-based economy that had its huge run-up in the 1970s and 80s, real estate wealth that was built upon the acceleration of the 1970s and 80s, and the generation that really came up in the 1970s and the 1980s. And they're still clinging onto that model of growth and like even like how you're supposed to even get married and start a family and live your life based on this old model, which is essentially like 50 years old now. And so he wants to be able to take Korea into this next era. And I don't know if he can, completely do this in 5 years. But out of all the candidates, I think he can understand what has been going on. And he has seen how we've gotten here. He has seen from the 1.0 internet was basically 1980s and 90s, and then seen the .com, and then has seen now where we have now emerged into this whole blockchain atmosphere. And I think he can do it. Okay, so what was his background? So he was, and how was he a doctor and a tech entrepreneur? So essentially, he was studying to be a doctor, and then he had to do some research project that related to medicine. in the 1980s. And then he said like the computer software programs were not sufficient enough for him to do his data collection. So he developed his own software program, and so that's how he got into computer programming. Then in 1988, the first computer viruses started to hit Korea, and I guess somehow he started to develop a antivirus software, and then his antivirus software became like the standard for Korea, and then he moved on to start his own company. He was also like a college professor, but then his company grew, and then so he was like trying to decide between, do I go down the college professor track or this internet entrepreneur track? And then he went down the internet entrepreneur track, and he started On Labs. And he said that, like, you know, it wasn't like some like super like, you know, privileged, like, you know, rich businessman's life. He said, like, you know, he really understands like what it's like when you sell a product to a company. They don't want to pay you for like 6 months to a year. You have to go to a bank and get charged huge interest for gap financing just to pay your employees. How you have to be crunching a calculator late at night while your old colleagues who are still professors are probably just chilling at home having like a nice warm dinner while you're just trying to like being like, why is like my accounting off by like 5 cents? And you know, he says that he really understands the struggles of people who do business. And I think we really need that kind of leader who's not just kind of like this coddled politician who knows the ins and outs of small to medium enterprises, and also working with large conglomerates, and then also seeing like the macro trends of where the world is going with technology and how it's developing. I mean, he's even benchmarking like the whole digital nations of policies, and like how blockchain is being integrated into countries like Estonia, where they have your medical records all on the blockchain, so that no matter what hospital you go to, there's a centralized but secure medical record system. So let's say you have to go to the ER and you're going to a hospital you've never been to, you can suddenly access all your medical records with your blockchain code and have instant access and better care, instead of like trying to either do tests from scratch or guesswork or try to call your old hospital that maybe they might have the records. And so I think he understands like where the world is about to head, and at least he can steer the ship in the direction where I think it can really be advantageous for Korea compared to other people who are mired in old thinking or some scandals, or somebody who has to write, you know, a Chinese character of king on their hand in order to go to a debate. I don't know. There is just a lot of crazy stuff going on with those other guys. And so I think now he may be ready. He may be ready to take the helm of the country, because in terms of intellect, of course he was always there. But now in terms of like, can he fight politically and know how to survive in our version of the Washington swamp? I think he can do that now. He does say that like he wants to take a technocratic approach, like reduce the power of the Blue House, which is our version of the White House, and empower all of the ministries and empower the Prime Minister's office, so that it's like decentralizing power. Normal people are always saying like, we have to change the government. We have to change the government. We have to change the government. But really, it's almost like as if you're still using like Windows 3.1 or Windows 98, like that old software program in a new computer, and you're like, why is it not working? I need a new computer. I can't wait to get a new computer. We need to get a new computer. You get a new computer, you put in like another old man with the same like 1980s thinking, 1970s thinking, you know, like Windows 3.1, Windows 98, and you're like, why is this not working? I need a new computer. We need to get a new government. We need to get a new computer. You ever think that you might need to update your software? You know, like the program, like we like update our software like once every probably like 3 weeks there's a new patch, or maybe even more than that. And the Constitution of South Korea hasn't been updated in like decades. And even before that, it was barely updated. And then when it was updated by a dictator. And so we really have like the remnants and a half reformed constitution. Like basically we have like a military junta constitution. And that makes me think that maybe I would like a refund on my last lawsuit with the country of Korea, because I thought I was going into a court of law in a functioning democracy, but actually now I'm thinking that that was under false advertising and false pretenses. This was a military junta type of constitutionally based government. So I want a refund. I want a refund because they had not updated their software. And so I think that having a leader with a mindset where a system has to be updated and that the government is more than just a charismatic leader who is kind of like an emperor or a king, but really is somebody who is there as a caretaker who is going to invest in a system that is going to be updated. I think that might be a good thing. And it might be very great symbolically if we do have a president who was a former tech entrepreneur who was responsible for keeping the nation's computers safe and upgraded constantly, to now upgrade our government system, to upgrade even the core operating system of Korea, which is the Constitution. So maybe we should think about that. And maybe we should really take a little bit more time to think about what this means now that Mr. Ahn Cheol Soo has entered the race. At least it's going to be a lot more exciting. All right, guys, let me know what you think. If you have any other questions, if you want the presidential race to be covered a little bit more, like, share, and comment below. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.